Good evening. May 12th, 2021. Well, let's do that again. Good morning, good evening, wherever it may be across the nation or around the world. Once again, you are listening to the VMware Communities Roundtable podcast. This is podcast number 555. My name is Eric Nilsson, and with me today, I have my co-host Matt Longeth. Today's Thursday, May 12th, 2021. Had a little bit of a glitch in the network, but we're back. Matt, how you doing today?
Eric, do you have your snack ready or a drink nearby? Because I feel like we could go on for hours today. We have new CEO announcements, and we have Carl Webster talking about all things EUC, Citrix, Horizon, the full stack. But before we dive right into all of that, how are you, sir? How are things out there? And as always, what's the color of the bay?
Well, let me tell you, I am very well, only because of the announcements. I'm super jazzed with who we picked for the CEO. We'll get there. It is a little chilly today in California. Had a little storm blow through. We're kind of like one of those no rain, foggy kind of storms in California we get in the Bay Area. So it was like a cool 52 this morning in the morning for breakfast. And but it's sunny kind of coming out. And color of the Bay is a little choppy green because it got a little wind coming up, and it's a little gray and chilly here today. So a little bit of throwback into late spring happening. On the show today, we're going to be covering Horizon 7.12 blog series with Carl Webster. Carl is on the show. We'll say hello to Carl right now. Hey, Carl, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well.
Very good.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, great to have you. You are kind of a legend when it comes to desktop and virtualizing desktop between Citrix and Parallels and now VMware. So great to have you on the show. Should be a fun show. But before we get to you, we do have to cover the news, and it is an interesting news day today. So, Matt, you alluded to it. The news of the day is the live stream happened for the desktop world. You can go still catch the live stream. Don't forget to go listen to the live stream that we covered last week on Anywhere Workspace. You can go to VMware.com, anywhere-workspace-event.html. Go check out that live stream. And of course, I'm just kidding because, Matt, what else is happening?
I think we have a new CEO.
I think we do. And congratulations to Raghu Raghumaran. If you haven't heard it, you must have living under a rock somewhere, because we announced this morning, East Coast time, that Raghu won the CEO position. And let me tell you, I am super excited about that. Believe it or not, Raghu hired me. He was the director that I interviewed with when I started here maybe 14 years ago, and I worked on his team in tech marketing. So it was us and maybe 10 other people directly reporting to Raghu. That was back in the days when we reported to he reported to Diane Green. So I got to meet Diane and work with Diane, Raghu, and Raghu has been at the company ever since, leading tech.
2003, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. He was here at the very beginning with Diane and Mendel. So I've always commented that if Raghu leaves, I'm going to be very sad, right? So this is actually a kind of an exciting follow-up to Pat Gelsinger, right?
I think it's a tremendous opportunity. I mean, it's a core technologist, right? I mean, if you look at where Pat was, is always someone that's not necessarily how that they have progressed in their career through management, but a key part is being that technologist first and then progressing through the management stacks. And Raghu obviously continues that a tremendous foundation to continue the company forward.
Yeah, and I believe that Pat Gelsinger has a really close relationship with Raghu. Raghu has always been the key guy that he would put in roles that were important to VMware. So with Pat over at Intel now and Raghu running VMware, I think there's a lot of synergy between the two of us, right? And certainly, if you were here back in 2005 when I started, or 2006. We were a big Dell shop back then. Dell, we were tight with Dell, right? Like, and Raghu used to say, yeah, look, we had Dell laptops everywhere. Dell gave us deals on everything. Diane Green worked with Dell. So I think that, Raghu understands the relationship with Dell, and so I don't see that pulling apart too much when we spin out, right? I think that's really good. Also, he understood HP, he understood the other vendors, he understood IBM, he understood the partner ecosystem. So I think this is like if you're going to spin out VMware to be an independent company, I can't think of a better person that understands our market and understands how we go to market than Raghu from a business perspective. And then, like you say, the technology that he understands, and he understands the data center better than anybody I've ever talked to, right? And in the last 2 years, he's been running the cloud integration with Andy Gesso and the guys up at Amazon, right? And so he also understands that. So he's really navigated well our strategy on how to go to market with all the different pieces of the industry. So super excited about that. And you know what? He's just a super nice guy, right? Like he's not maybe as extrovert as Pat Gelsinger is, like from a super nice perspective, but I've never had a bad conversation with Raghu. He's always been calm and nice and listened and been caring when you have an issue or you need some help with something. He'll always go, okay, well, that's a good idea. Let's see if we can, like he always gives you the right people to connect with, and never a mean word comes out of Raghu's mouth. Always positive, always visionary. So man, I'm just super excited today. Like this is great.
When we did our initial, episode or special episode on Pat's departure, one of the key things that we pointed out and we talked in depth about was how important whomever this new CEO would be to have not only be the technologist fit, but the cultural fit for what Pat had established.
Right.
And obviously Raghu's there, right? He's seen the ecosystem. He knows what the culture, the community, the Epic 2 values that the company has grown and made part of their cultural ecosystem. So he's there, right? He's definitely that fit because he's been part of the growth and the expansion of the organization for 18 years. So great to see. I couldn't be happier. I think that's a fine choice by the board and the next logical succession to carry us along with what will be a tremendous growth path.
Yeah, I also agree. All right, with that little happy moment, thank you for listening. Now we're going to get to the show, because Carl Webster is here with us, and we do want to talk about what he's been blogging about. So, Carl, welcome to the show. You're a blogger. You're kind of a desktop famous guy. Tell us about how you got where you are today. What have you worked on in your career? And we'll spend some time getting to know you.
All right. Well, I'm in my 44th year in IT. So I've been in IT longer than most of my IT friends have been alive.
Nice.
So
good to be alive.
So it was a confluence of events, but it's actually, believe it or not, the U.S. Army screwing up my military orders that got me into IT. So I went to basic training, and when for the Louisiana Army National Guard, when I came back, my original orders were only supposed to be for 8 weeks because I was a tuba player, a professional musician, going to school as a music major. So I was considered, civilian qualified for my skill. So 8 weeks, and I was supposed to be out. The Army made it for 1 year, the orders. And so when I got back from basic training, I was still on active duty. And after sitting around home, I called my CO and said, I'm bored. Can I go find a job? And he was like, well, sure. So there was an ad for an office clerk. So I applied for the job just to be an office clerk. And when the recruiter saw my very small resume, he said, oh, I see you have experience as a night auditor. This bank customer might be interested in you. So I went to First National Bank, Shreveport, Louisiana, interviewed, and they said, hey, we've got this new position. You'll be trained in mainframes half a day, and you'll sort checks for the bookkeeping department in half a day. It pays $400 a month. We don't know if we'll keep the position after 90 days. Are you interested? And I was like, $400 a month. Wow. What do you do with that kind of money? back in 1977 when minimum wage was $2 an hour. So that's how I got into IT. And I say I took to it like a duck takes to water, and been in it ever since. Got started being trained as a mainframe operator, then got some training in mainframe COBOL and mainframe assembler, then moved into PC software development, because in 77, there was no IBM PC, there was no Apple PC. You might be able to find some kits somewhere, but you couldn't go to a store and buy a personal computer. And so everything was mainframe. So that's where my background came from, was mainframes. And then I moved into software development. And then from the mid 80s until 2001, I started at a company in a small town in Arkansas as a help desk person, because I'd gone back to school as an accounting major, because I figured there was no money in music. You can make more money in IT. So I started studying accounting, and then they wrote accounting software. So I was there to answer questions about accounts payable, accounts receivable, how general ledger works and all that stuff. And then got into software development. And then after 17 years, I had gone from help desk to principal software architect of the company. But after so many years of working literally 100 hours a week or more, I walked in the office one day. Matter of fact, July 20th, 2001, I walked in and I could not remember how to program.
Wow.
It was just, when you say burnout,
yeah,
my brain was burned out. I could not remember anything about programming. And I was the, principal software architect. I knew everything about every program they had. Walked in and just stared at my screen, and I was just like, I don't know what to do.
Timed out, right?
Yeah. And so they, believe it or not, after 17 years, they just escorted me out the door.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's one way of solving the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's when so that company is actually where I got my start in EUC, because we supported literally every network operating system out there. We did Lantastic, we did the Apple TOPS, we did the IBM PC, broadband network. We did, NetWare ELS 1, 2, 3, and and all that stuff. And we started using this newfangled thing called Citrix Multi-User OS2, because I was a big fan of OS2. I loved OS2 back in the day. And that's how I got my start with Citrix back there. So I've been around Citrix for, I think it's my 31st year of being around Citrix products.
Yeah. That's a neat history. I remember the terminal multiplexers that I got on my first SCO Unix box, and then I go back to the mainframe with card readers and JCL control language and all that. It's like you and me have come up along the same road, right? And Peachtree accounting. I don't know if you ever got to spend time.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I was a Peachtree certified consultant at one time.
There you go. Yep. I got Peachtree along the way. And then there was another one. I worked at a small mid-sized company. There was a kind of a warehouse inventory system called Trackline, right? Which was also like a inventory, accounting kind of thing. So yeah, you come up through that whole space, right? And then working with customers, and then, terminal multiplexers, and, get like 100 terminals on a SCO machine, right? Like you had like these cards that had like ports and those. Then, and then there was the fat cable, Ethernet cables. Like I forget what the name of those were, that, built your token ring networks and other kind of networks that were there. And then TCP/IP finally got it enabled, and you had like thin twisted pair TCP/IP, and you're like, oh, thank God, we got like cables that I can string through attics and ceiling panels, right? We're taking out ceiling panels and stringing those guys. So interesting. Yeah. Interesting thing. And then you were in Citrix, and then everything became modern. And when did you start getting into the virtualization space on that?
Oh man, that wasn't until probably the mid 2000s, because everyone still wanted to do everything physical. No one wanted to mess with that newfangled GSX stuff, because they figured, well, I'm running Exchange. Exchange uses so much of the CPU and memory, I can't share it with anything. Same thing with SQL. Same thing with terminal servers. Same thing with, the old Citrix MetaFrame and presentation server. People didn't think applications could be virtualized or run on a virtualized platform because everyone just assumed, well, it's always pegging the CPU. I can't share anything. So, but then VMware came out, with that utility you could run, for what, like a month on your servers, and then you'd come out and find out, oh well, crap, my average CPU utilization is 5%.
Right. Yep.
I don't really use that much RAM. There's really, the server's really not that busy. Yeah, we can actually, reside with other servers and other applications on the same virtualization underpinnings. And that's when people, start. As a matter of fact, there were people actually writing, what was it? Project Virtual Reality Check. One of their first white papers was, can you actually virtualize terminal server? Can you run terminal server on ESX?
Right.
And the thing was, yeah, you can. And you can actually run, instead of having one terminal server, with, say, 256 meg of RAM and a, quad core CPU, or actually 4 CPUs, since we didn't have the multiple core back then. You could have that and actually install ESXi on top of that and actually take that same hardware, and now you could probably get 6 or 8 or 10 terminal servers on the same hardware. And now we're saving money because instead of having to buy 10 servers, I can buy one, put ESXi on it, and man, yeah, now we're golden.
Yep. Well, it's an interesting history. I mean, we could, like Matt, as you mentioned, I think we could spend 10 hours. If I had a lot of food here, I would just sit and eat, and we could talk all day. We'll transition to kind of like the industry now. I'll get some more industry questions. Before I do that, I skip Corey. I want to bounce back to Corey for just a second. Corey Amaro, I know you have some expert announcements and stuff you want to talk about. So let's go to you, and then we'll free you up.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, so vExpert news. So vExpert Avi is coming. So the vExpert Avi sub-program is going to happen. I think I talked a little bit about that last week. I've requested licenses for all the vExperts. So the vExpert licenses will be coming out in the next week or so. Also, vExpert applications for the second half of 2021 are going to open in June. I don't have a date yet, but once I do, I will announce that. And then we'll have results right around VMworld time, just like we do every year, voting results. So I have all of that. We'll be good to go to set up the vExpert Avi program as well. I'm excited about that. What we're going to look for, since Avi is kind of new to the VMware community, and we did this when we first started up the NSX program, is not a lot of people were talking about NSX at the time. So that's the same expectation with Avi, right? So we are going to look for the people who are talking about Avi currently, whether it's in sessions or podcasts or blogs, whatever it may be. And then we're also looking for people who are willing to learn about Avi and talk about Avi and their social channels as well. So that'll be a little bit more about that as we spin up the program and as we launch that and go out and with the email and send that out to everybody. So that's what I've got for vExpert for this week.
All right, thanks. Sorry, I forgot to bring you in the loop at the beginning.
No worries.
That's okay. Are you finally out of the snowstorms in Utah? Did you get some nice weather eventually?
We're bouncing from the 80s, and then it's in snow, right? So it snowed 2 days ago, Woke up in the morning, looked outside, and it's dumping snow. And the day before, it was 80 degrees. So Utah weather. This is how we transition. But luckily, I was in Arkansas last week, where it was beautiful.
I know that based on the graying of your beard and the fact that you live up in Utah, you're up on top of a mountain somewhere at about 9,000 feet, which is why you're still getting snow. So come back out of your cave, come back down to regular elevation, and it'll be nice weather. Just
right.
All right, Carl, thanks for letting us do that interruption. So we were the fact that now we've seen desktop virtualization. Matt, do you want to take Carl through kind of like how we go through where we went from getting some core virtualization in the desktop to I'll hand it over to you now.
So the topic that we brought up today was Carl's blog, which I had stumbled across as a Citrix admin back in the day and have always had it bookmarked as top of mind. It's just, I consider it one of those Bible sites that are out there that you almost check in to see what the new information has been out there on a daily basis because it's so useful. But Carl, why the blog? Where was that transition from you coming out of what you had been as a chief technologist and chief programmer, and then stepping over into the EUC space and doing more consultancy? But a key part of your community identity and your brand, if you will, now is this EUC blog at carlwebster.com. So how did you get started? Why? We heard about the Citrix background, but why was there that initial need or just desire to start out and posting information?
I've got a lot of friends who are MVPs, and at the time I started my blog back in 2008, so 2003 through 2008, I started concentrating on Active Directory and Exchange. And my main AD mentor, Michael B. Smith, kept encouraging me. He says, man, you get all the interesting projects. I get the projects where, like an Exchange, where admins actually went onto the old M drive and set NTF permissions on mailboxes to keep people out of mailboxes and stuff like that. And then you go to do a migration and you can't migrate because the M drive is all screwed up, which is why now you no longer have access to that old M drive. And just kept coming up with all these weird projects where the company that hired me in 2007 for my AD experience put me on what they call their A team, where when the crap really hit the fan, you'd get a call 2:00 in the afternoon. And this actually did happen. I got a call at 11:15 and said, we need you in New York City tonight. Your plane leaves at 2:00. Pick up your tickets at the counter at the Little Rock Airport. And so I literally kept 2 suitcases packed because I would leave. I would go and, they called me the firefighter. I was the guy that went into the firestorm, figured out what was causing the fire, fixed the fire, came home, dumped all my clothes out. My wife did the laundry. I hit the bed, woke up the next morning, never knowing where I was going or what I was going to be working on. The phone would ring. I'd pick up the next suitcase, hit the car, head to the airport. And I was on the road 27 days a month back then. And so they kept encouraging, man, you see all this weird crap. Why don't you write about it? Well, there were so many, at that time, there were so many Active Directory and Exchange blogs out there that, and then I couldn't get customer permission to write about the stuff. Plus, it's kind of hard to write about the stuff when you don't have screenshots of the actual issues and stuff and how you found the issue, in these mysterious things that no one knows exist on servers. They're called event logs. No one knows they exist, and
terribly mysterious things.
Yeah, really mysterious. But, you just find out. So I decided to take a different focus. So I was doing 95% Active Directory Exchange work and 5% Citrix terminal server stuff. And then after being on the road 27 days a month for a couple of years, I finally just said, hey, my wife has had enough of this. I want to come off of the road and, not be on the road 27 days a month. Well, then all of a sudden, it's just like a switch flipped in the company. And I got to the point to where I no longer did Exchange projects, and I didn't do that many AD projects. I wound up doing all these Citrix projects. And so I went from doing 95% AD Exchange work to 5% AD Exchange work and 95% Citrix work. And so what I found in the internet, in the same thing with VMware, there are so you could take Citrix, Microsoft, VMware. Back in 2007, 2008, there are lots of blogs, lots of sites out there where people go into great technical details of the products. But what I realized, and what I told Brian Madden when we did the interview for VMworld 2020, is that every day, even today, May 12, 2021, there is someone who is stepping into the virtualization world, the EUC world, that knows absolutely nothing about it. They don't know about profiles. They don't know why roaming profiles are the devil. They don't know what virtualization is, much less server virtualization, desktop virtualization, application virtualization, all these weird things that we used to have to do in the registry, when you would go to, install an app on the terminal server. They don't know these things. So someone has to be there to teach the basics, to show them, how to get started. And so I decided that was going to be the focus of carlwebster.com.
Well, I gotta say, before you go too far, look, I know what those logs are. That's what crashes your root file system, right? Because they fill up, right? That's all they're good for. It's like every time my machine starts behaving oddly, I have to go look and figure out that, in var logs somewhere, there's these massive files that just keep filling up and I have to remove them. That's all I know about that.
Yeah. So yeah. So I decided that, and I actually tried to get a trademark on learning the basics of. But someone had written a SQL website years ago, and someone had written another blog series years before that, where they learning the basics of. So I was not, I was denied the trademark for learning the basics of. But that's most of my series. The articles I used to write are learning the basics of, because I want to show you how to get started and how to get from nothing to where you have something that where you can show I have accomplished something. This is something I can use. Okay, now take that knowledge, and now you can start going to, the James Rankin sites and the Carl Stowhood sites, and start learning, the more advanced topics, and why we have so many different profile options, why we have so many different virtualization options, why applications can be handled different ways, the difference between non-persistent and persistent, pooled, non-pooled, assign on first use, all that stuff. You take someone the first day on the job and try to explain all that stuff to them, their eyes are going to glaze over, and they probably won't come back for day two. And so you got to take them on a step-by-step journey through learning. You don't take someone and teach them how to do addition and subtraction and then throw them into theoretical algebra.
Yeah, and it's actually a really good point too that we as older admins, right, not that I'm nearly that, take the 20-year-olds and teach them a lot of things and make it exciting for them and give them entry points which are easy to consume so that because over time we've just learned all this stuff and then we talk in our own language, right? And it's like really to take it back into like in order to keep a new crop of IT people, coming through the system, because otherwise that's how technology tends to fall off, right? Is that you don't have a next generation that's excited about it and knows how to do it. It gets more expensive to find the talent. And next thing it's some new piece of technology comes along like Amazon Cloud Services or something, and then all of a sudden there's no more industry, right? So it is important that we as community members actually provide those stepping stones. One, to make it easy for them, also make it exciting, make it fun, right? Because we demystify it, and then also, after they've been there 5 or 7 years, we have somebody else to talk to, right? Because they know the vocabulary.
So let me explain. So I'm working on 2 article series right now. The first one has a very strong VMware focus, and the second one will be all VMware focused. So this next series, I'm actually working on chapter 15 today, and it's building Webster's Lab version 2. And what I take them from is bare metal hardware, and I show them how to install and configure an EXXI 7.0 host. Now that we got a host in storage, now let's install Vcenter. All right, now that we got Vcenter, now let's do our VDS, our virtual distributed switches, and now let's do our networking. Let's do our networking storage. Now that we have storage, let's upload some ISOs. All right, we got ISOs. Okay, now let's build a template, a server template, and a Windows 10 template. Now that we got a template, let's start building some VMs. All right, we have nothing. So what would be the first VM you'd build? Domain controller. So I actually walk them through building a domain controller. That's actually the longest article in the series. The Word document is 95 pages long and has 87 images in it, which is creating Active Directory, where I explain to them what Active Directory is, what DNS is, what DHCP is, what a domain controller is, global catalog, all just one step thing through PowerShell, which is what new admins should be doing, learning PowerShell. So we're doing everything PowerShell. So here's how you do everything, and here's why you do everything, and here's why we set our network properties this way, and here's why we configure DNS this way, and here's why, when you run on a domain controller, Microsoft DNS and Microsoft DHCP, those two are literally joined at the hip. And the way you configure Microsoft DHCP directly affects how Microsoft DNS works, and how you do aging and scavenging and setting up all that stuff affects how Active Directory works. So you got to understand how all these pieces and parts fit together. And so right now I'm up to I've got 20 articles planned. So right now Active Directory is built, and so now the hard one for me, the certificate authority, creating a certificate authority and understanding certificates and how do you install certificates on servers, and how do you configure a domain controller for secure LDAP, because we got to have all this stuff. So when the next series comes up, which is going to be on Horizon 8 2103, we need to have something to hand certificates to everything, because security, everything should have a security focus. How do we secure everything? And so everything should be secure from the get-go. So I'm showing them how to do all of this stuff one step at a time. Once the lab is built, then I can start on the Horizon 8 2103, or heck, who knows, by that time it could be Horizon 8 2106, maybe out the door. And that'd be what I use, and it'd be the same thing as what I did, with the Horizon 712 series. hey, here's what it is. Here's how you install. Here's how you configure. Here's how you create a master image. Here's how you create pools. Here's how you use stuff. Here's how
It's one
you
of the best
access
parts of
this
the
stuff.
series, Carl. It really is. You break it down into such a consumable, not only a consumable way, but then it's layering the information on. It's how did you build the foundation? Let's get your connection servers installed. Then we're spinning up your UAGs. Then it's about, okay, well, what are we going to do for image management? And then how profiles are going to be laid down. And then you're over to 2019 to do, RDSH pools and the whole gamut of the Horizon stack. And not only can you look at, I look at it two ways, right? You had mentioned about that new admin that wants to understand what it is to lay it down for the first time and from end to end. But it's also useful, and I point my customers to this sometimes, where they have, let's call it a partial stack deployment, where they might just be doing, RDSH hosts, but they haven't done DEM, or that they need to tweak their pools, or it's an older deployment where they're doing, full clones and for whatever reason, and move over to instant clones because they're trying to get prepped out for where they want to be with Horizon 8. Or more traditionally, obviously, link clones over to instant clones. But just to go in there and to pick apart those little sections in detail, it's so much great information, and it's so easy to flow through. I know the whole series, I think that I saw on your 15th chapter for Horizon, it's something like, 600 pages and 450 images. I mean, it's incredible. I'll say this as, obviously as an employee, it's better than our own internal documentation for kicking it off and starting it to begin with, right? Is that new intro for those modules. It's absolutely, utterly fantastic.
We should do a shout out to the URL.
carlwebster.com, carlwebster.com.
And click on the blog at the top if you want to go find his blogs, because he's got a lot of Citrix content there as well. But if you click on the blog, his blog has, and then down at the bottom, it also has category topics. So if you want to go see what categories he's got a really cool section that shows how many articles he's done for various technologies. But you have to scroll down below the fold to see that. But when you see that, you'll see he has, I think, like 20 or 30 VMware articles, and that's that whole series that we're talking about there. So just to
and then it's going to be about another 40 or 50 after these two series get done.
Carl, you had sprinkled in VMware here and there throughout the blog series. I always, the title of the blog is, the
accidental Citrix
admin. So I always think Citrix when I think Carl Webster. But this latest series has been so fantastic. But up till the 7.12 release, it wasn't as so VMware focused. So was it just a matter of, hey, we need to see what's on the other side of the fence, or what was the impetus to do this whole stack with Horizon and build such a great blog series?
Well, my previous employer had asked, hey, would you be willing to learn Horizon? We got a couple of customers that are interested in it because they don't like what's going on with Citrix licensing. And, it's like Citrix is trying to force everyone into the cloud. And some people don't like that, and I was like, well, sure. I've never seen it. I've never touched it. Well, other than back in the Horizon 5 timeframe, I think, when Citrix hired me to help write a view to Citrix Zen Desktop migration toolkit. So he asked me to take a look at it. And so I went with open eyes. My thing was, is this worth looking at? I don't know anything about it. So let's just go. And so as I explained, Brian Madden, was that I built the lab, I worked through the process, documenting stuff, writing things down. I'm still old school, still got a yellow pad. I write everything down, as I'm going through. And then I destroy everything. I literally take gparted and I wipe the ESXi hosts and I start over and following everything I've done to see, have I left out anything? Is there something that doesn't work? And so Fortunately, VMware, I was surprised. VMware was very receptive to me highlighting shortcomings in the product, where I would say, why do I have to do that? You say I must do this. Why? Why is it a must? And then I would go and test. Afterwards, I would test. Was that a must? That's not a must. It works just fine without that. Why is it a must? Why do
I
you
find that if you don't do the must, your var logs just fills right back up again.
Yeah, and so Brian Madden told me that there were lots of internal tickets created off my article series for fixing things that I was pointing out. So when I'm doing the event database for the connection server, why must I use SQL authentication? I actually happened to find a cached copy of an old VMware article that actually explained it, because that was originally written way back when. So we're talking technical debt here, that used an Oracle Java database connector. And at that time back then, it required SQL authentication. It's never been updated. It no longer, that Oracle Java database connector no longer requires SQL authentication. Just no one at VMware has ever taken the time, to
Gone
just
through and
go in there
proof
and
it.
just say, hey, you can use Windows authentication now. So when I go through the Horizon 8 build, destroy, because I do it 4 times. I build and destroy 4 times before I start writing the article series, because I want to make sure I have everything documented. So if I do something wrong, I can point out, and you'll see this all the time in the Horizon 712 series. Oh, by the way, don't select this checkbox because a friend told me if you do this, you're going to get this error. Or, hey, if you see this error, a friend told me it's because you did this wrong back here, which is why I told you not to do something, 7 steps earlier. It's because, crap, I screwed everything up and I had to wipe everything out and start all over again. And I'm like, that's why we have labs. That's why you have people like me who are willing to go through all that pain and the trials and error to figure out what all these check boxes and radio buttons and all the options are, and what happens if everything's working and I do this. What happens if I have all of these connectors or all these connections from different clients actually to, published applications and desktops and virtual, and desktop OS desktops, and my connection server goes down. What happens? Oops. I see a message on all 4 of my all my thin clients back here. Oops, sorry, connection interrupted. Oops, that's why you had to have more than one connection server. And oh, by the way, that's the old tunneling protocol. Oh, by the way, that's old technical debt. So there's a lot of. So it's fun. I know it sounds like a lot of pain, but it's actually, for me, I actually enjoy that, because there are times you get frustrated because you're trying to figure something out and you don't understand it.
What was that, from coming over from the Citrix world, from the Zen world? What was that mental block? What was that one that you hit within a Horizon stack that just went, wow, this is different, or I don't quite understand why this is done this way, as opposed to the Zen world?
I don't think there was just one. I'm not saying that there are many. There was no one big roadblock. I would think any qualified Citrix admin or engineer could easily, of course, dependent upon their mental roadblocks and their prejudices, toward Horizon, could, within reason, set up a Horizon proof of concept with not many issues, work through the issues, and go on. There were just some things to me like in connection server. I got a bunch of pulled desktop OS desktops. I can right click one and reboot, shut down, reset, whatever. I go to my RDSH pool, right click. Oh, I can't do any of that stuff. Ah, crap. I got to go over to Vcenter to do that. Why? And all these frustrations are laid out bare in that article series. Because I'm just like, why? Why do I have to do this? Or why does this not do this? Or why do you say it's this, but there's no explanation? But as far as the overall Horizon product, I found it very easy to implement. So you could have a prejudice and say, well, but it requires a VMware virtualization infrastructure and it requires vCenter. Hey, it's a VMware product. They can make any requirements they want. So, once you get over that prejudice, it's easy to go through and, just follow the steps. There's lots of blogs out there that will show you how to get all this stuff up and going, but most of them don't go through all the details. They don't go through every option. They don't go through every checkbox. So, I mean, if you have looked at that article series, I don't just say, hey, when you do this, just do next, I accept, next, finish, install. Or install,
every
finish.
option's explained.
Every option is explained. Hey, it says here, I'm installing the Horizon agent, in this VM, and it says I must install the RDSH option. If I must install it, why is it an option? Why can I unselect it if it's a must-have? And then, if it's a must-have, why do you have a VMware technical article on how to bypass it? And that's also mentioned in the article series. So, I find all these discrepancies and stuff and point them out. I thought the Horizon product overall was very good. I thought the memory usage and stuff, on the vCenter, all the parents and all that stuff, I was just like, holy crap, man. If you had 32 hosts in a cluster, woo, this would be a cluster. Because, man, that'd be a lot of memory. That'd be a lot of copies of stuff. I was like, whoo. So as I go through the Horizon 8 series, I'm actually going to be looking for all these things I pointed out. Were any of them fixed in Horizon 8?
It's always good to call it out, right? Let's see where have we progressed with the product.
Yeah. And now the nice thing, I guess, about having a name in the community is if I reach a stumbling block, I know I can reach out to Andy Morgan. Of course, this is before I was a vExpert, so I know I can reach out to Andy Morgan. I can email Brian Madden. I can email Ron Oglesby. I can email Sean Bass. I've got a whole list of people I know at VMware that I can reach out to, for something. Of course, now with the vExpert honor, you got all those vExperts you can ask questions to. But before then, and the nice thing before I even started writing these two series, I emailed Noel, Brian Madden, Ron Oglesby, and is it Bill? Is Bill the other person? The other person in the influencer in the community. So I can't. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. But I emailed all four of them and said, hey, I'm coming up with this article series, and here's what I've got planned. Boom, emails coming back. Let us know what you need in technical support, licensing, downloads, marketing. Now, I'm a CTP fellow. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award from Citrix. after I finished the Horizon series, I reached out to my contacts at Citrix and said, hey, I want to do this exact same thing for your on-prem product, just like I did for Horizon. That's the response I got. I still can't write that article series because a regular person in the community that's not a vExpert, that's not a CTP, that's not an MVP, can actually go to VMware.com, register for a Horizon evaluation, and get downloads, ISO files, and keys for vSphere, for vCenter, for Horizon, for DIM, for just anything you need in the Horizon infrastructure. VMware says, here, it's yours for 60 days. That same person cannot, at this time, cannot go to Citrix.com and do the same thing for Citrix virtual apps and desktops on-premises product.
It says something about how we value the EUC community, right? We trust the community with the products.
Yeah.
We want them to get hands-on.
Yeah. Well, some of us, the CTPs, are aggressively and actively working with Citrix to resolve this issue because of my frustration. Hey, I'm the guy that writes the how-to articles. I'm the guy that submits thousands of corrections to the Citrix documentation and CTX articles. When I submit a correction, usually within a day, I get a personal response back from the person who looked at my correction and implemented it. Wish I had the same thing with VMware. I can't get anyone to respond to me for VMware feedback on their documentation and KB articles. You know, so to me, for the EUC community, VMware is kind of like, what was it? Get my hands out. Yeah, here we go. We're going to hand it to you. We're going to give it to you for 60 days. Do with it what you want. 60 days. Now, day number 61, you know, hey, all right. That's fine.
Well, you are a vExpert now, right? You've been in the vExpert portal. You get all the licenses as a vExpert.
Yes, but I write the series from the perspective of I'm trying to teach someone from the community.
Right.
Here's how you can go and get Microsoft Server 2019 and Server or Windows 10 ISOs to download for use in your lab. Here's how you can get VMware products for use in your lab for free for 60 days.
Yeah. Now, note also, you might want to add in that if you join VMUG, I think the VMUG Advantage program for $100 gets you those license sets as well. So
I have both. I have a 3-year VMUG Advantage subscription. I like it that much. Right. And usually because VMUG updates their licenses and downloads and stuff before the vExpert does. So I like the V. Plus, I like having the double licenses and stuff. Right. So, but I pay for the VMUG. I find it, you know, a good, worthwhile investment.
Sure. And
we're trying to convince Citrix to do the same thing, that they should have a community license program. VMware has VMUG Advantage and eval experience. You know, we're trying to convince Citrix to do the same thing that VMware has offered for years. Yeah, years.
Probably 6-7 years. Yeah, sure. No worry.
Yeah, at a reasonable price. I mean, these are vSphere Enterprise Plus licenses that you're getting. I mean, heck, I went to some website and looked at the retail price for that sucker, and I was like, holy crap, that's expensive. I'm glad I get it for $100 and something a year.
Matt, we are coming up on the top of the hour, so I know that we did get a 5 or 7 minutes late start, so we got a few more minutes. Are there things that we want to, obviously promote his blog? Again, I'll say carlwebster.com. Go there, check that out. Great way. And for people that have done vSphere but haven't got into the end user space yet, this would be a really nice way to do that, right? Like we have.
It's fantastic. And Carl, to bring it a little bit full circle, you had mentioned that you had gone through the series with, the initial home lab and doing some of the Windows, 2019 deployment, and rather doing it through the GUI, you were doing off of PowerShell, which is fantastic. On the Horizon 8 series that you're working on, how much of automation with that deployment are you focusing on? Is that something that I know you'll go through a lot of the GUI? There's some automation that's in the 7.12 guide, but do you see that making a change? Do you see trying to maybe do it a little bit more automated?
No, because my philosophy is you can't automate what you can't do at least once manually. You need to understand the process. You need to understand why you select this option and not this option, what impact that option has, either selecting it, deselecting it. You need to understand the process. Once you understand the process, then let's go through and, work on the automation stuff. But do it at least once manually so you understand it, and then automate it. But there's so many different ways to automate. It's just like, what would I use? Packer, MDT, SCCM? No, I'm not going to do SCCM. I don't have the licenses for all that stuff. And I don't want to use Hyper-V. But automation will come later. Matter of fact, I've actually proposed that to one person as the third series. All right, we've got everything built.
Right?
Yeah, because
right. Again, it's that it's the building blocks, stuff. Right?
Yeah. It's and I was just like, how can you automate when we don't even have one VM yet? We don't even have a domain yet. We don't have DNS or DHCP. How can you automate? How can I get IP addresses? We don't have any of that infrastructure built. Let's get the infrastructure built. Let's show them how to install the stuff. Then we can go through and say, okay, the way we installed this is how you would automate the same thing.
What do you use for your home lab? What do you have to build out all of this documentation? And so much of this is componentry of describing someone how to start to do and lay down these building blocks. The home lab is right there. So is the home lab described and in the articles, in these base articles? And
yes,
then
there is.
Yes, for yourself.
And if you just Google inside Webster's lab, there are articles. I've done like yearly articles. There's no reason to update it anymore because I'm not adding anything else to the lab because the lab is at its max. But everything is described in detail. Where I bought the Synology NASes, how they're configured, all the hosts I use for VMware, and the configuration for every host, where you can get them, the laptops I use, the monitors I use, the thin clients I use. Everything is described in those articles.
You have brought up thin clients, and we'll just jump over that real quick because I'm sure we have some EUC listeners on there. As far as thin client test licensing or NFR licensing that might be out there from vendors like Azure or whatnot, what have you come across of the guy that goes out there and then has thin clients and he wants to test it on his own? It could be HPEs, 10 zigs, whatnot. What's the best way to interact with those vendors if they want to start testing thin client management within their labs? So
Google 10 zig demo unit. And the first hit, because matter of fact, I just did this because I was on a webinar. I was moderating a webinar for 10 zig. And you can request a demo unit. The nice thing about 10 zig is all their licensing is in the unit. So when you buy or get a device, you have all the licensing you need. You get the management console, all the firmware updates, technical support, everything is included when you get the 10 zig unit. With iGel, you can request their UD Pocket. You can request eval units. 10 zig sent me 2 units to use in my lab. They're down there. And iGel sent me 2 units to use in my lab. You can request units. They will give you licenses to use. And so you can go through that entire process. I find both 10Zig and iGel very easy to work with, to get an evaluation unit in licensing. I've not worked with any other thin client vendor, so I can't say anything else about like HP or Dell Wise or whatever. But I've worked with those two vendors, and well, I've got units in here with licenses and everything.
Sometimes you just need to ask, right? If you can't find it, sometimes you just need to ask.
You just got to ask.
Take the time to search around on the website, drop the email out, make the contact out the rep, and just say, hey, can we do some demos?
Yeah. And, Google or whatever search engine you want to use, iGel demo, iGel evaluation, 10Zig demo, 10Zig evaluation, and you will come to their site where they just say, hey, fill in this information and we'll send you.
I did something very similar with ControlUp. I had a customer that was just happened to be a vExpert and was looking to lay down some NFR license to demo ControlUp in his lab as well, to do some internal testing with what they were doing. And again, just reached out to ControlUp. ControlUp said, sure, vExpert, your long NFR license.
Yep, you got it. I've been using ControlUp for many years, and they love the community just like VMware does. And you reach out to them, and they'll do anything they can to help you, and get you that. They'll even put an engineer on a support call with you for up to an hour to make sure you get it installed and configured correctly in your lab, so that you get an optimal experience with the product, so that you're happy with it and you'll recommend it.
We are at the top of the hour, guys. So
right.
It goes by fast. We knew it was going to be a cool, fun day today. Matt, we'll do the standard. How do we get? Matt will let you do that one. Go for it.
So, Carl, if for our listeners that are out there, let's hear the domain one more time.
CarlWebster.com.
And if they would like to follow you on socials, your Twitter handle.
Carl Webster.
Okay.
Facebook.
So
Carl Webster. LinkedIn. Carl Webster. Email.
On brand all
Webster
around.
at CarlWebster.com. I'll make myself very hard to find on the internet.
Very fun. Very fun. All right. With that, thank you guys for listening to nearly the end. As always, we are on youtube.com/vbarbecue, and you can also get us at vmw.re/pod. We're on iTunes, VMware Community Podcast. So, Carl, we always do this at the end. We talk a little bit of barbecue. I'm going to be doing some barbecue tonight. Actually, we're going to be doing some steak and corn. I talked about the Costco corn that is amazing. Even though it's from Costco, you'd think it wouldn't be any good. I know you're from Tennessee. What do they barbecue down in Tennessee?
Ribs, brisket, pork, chicken, sausage. So now I've got to go get me some ribs.
There you go. It is
barbecue ribs.
Carl, here's the important question. With your barbecue sauce, vinegar-based sauce or more of a northeastern sauce?
Vinegar. No vinegar.
Vinegar
no
or
mustard,
some
no
of the
mayo.
mustard. Yeah, sometimes I see that down there.
Yeah, molasses is most of the barbecue sauces you'll see around here. I'm not a vinegar person. I'm not a mustard person. North Alabama, you'll see some mayonnaise-based barbecue sauces. But most of the stuff here, if it's smoked right, you should not need a sauce.
Yeah. That's a mid-tier California. That's what they say. Like, if you're doing barbecue right, it has nothing to do with sauce. Maybe a rub, but never a sauce. Right?
Yeah. Brisket, you should be able to pick it up, and it just as you're holding it up, it just falls, and you're just trying to get the stuff in your mouth. It's so tender. You don't need a sauce on it. And ribs, you should be able to just pick up the bone, and the meat just kind of starts falling off on the side. Yeah, no sauce needed.
There you go. We're at the end of the show. Great show. Carl, thanks for coming on. Great to meet you. And maybe we'll get you on in the next time you get your next series going, and we'll talk a little bit more about that and drive some traffic to your site. Thank you for coming on the show.
Just don't crash it like Brian Madden did.
We will try not to do that. Matt will be.
Thanks for having me, man. I really enjoyed this.
All right. Yeah, good times. I had fun meeting you. Next week, we are going to try to get Michael Roy on to talk. I think he's got some stuff happening, new things that he's been working on.
Yeah, big developments with all things M1 chip for the roadmap and how we're trying to accommodate that and all things ARM. So I can't wait to hear from Michael.
Yep, that'll be fun. Some cool stuff with ARM coming up to VMworld. Go get yourself. Call for Papers. If you made it this far, Call for Papers closes, I think, at the end of the week on May 14th. Today's the 12th, and it's Wednesday. So, yeah, Friday is the deadline for Call for Papers. So if you want to do a live streamed VMworld paper, do that. I know that V Brownbag is going to also be doing Call for Papers. We've got a 2-day event happening at VMworld for the community. It will be live streamed on a single Zoom. You'll be able to come in and stay all day long, chat with everybody, and then V Brownbag is going to be doing talks, so we'll get that going as well. Until then, everybody have some good barbecue, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks a lot.